All right, Rob, it's good to talk to you again. I think the last time we spoke was right around this time last year. So thanks a lot for helping me to get more familiar with what's going on for Oregon football for the 2022 season.
You got it. Happy to join you.
All right, Rob. So let's talk about the big story first. Difference from last year to this year, of course, that's the new head coach. You've been around a lot of head coaches for Oregon. So how's the difference this offseason with Coach Lanning?
Yeah, there have been a lot of head coaches even just in the last few years, as you point out. It's been a period of transition for this program after just many years of stability under Rich Brooks and then Mike Bellotti. The last 10 years or so have seen a lot of change, so it's been different. I think with Dan Lanning, there's some foundational elements of the program that administration wanted to see continue, and then also maybe tweak some things, bring a different kind of energy, a different kind of voice to the program, and I think he's doing that. I think Mario Cristobal and the way he elevated recruiting here was something that I think everybody appreciated. Just the value of quality personnel being probably first among equals when it comes to the factors that go into fielding a quality team. So and having a quality season. So when Mario Cristobal makes Oregon a perennial top 10, top 15 recruiting power nationally, I think there was a desire to see that continue. But then, I think with Dan Lanning, there's a little bit of a different kind of energy. I mean, he's a much younger guy, obviously. He listens to the same music as some of the guys on the team. He can kind of speak their language, so to speak. The credibility he brought here, coming off helping Georgia win a national championship, says a lot. And I think, for a program that was known for many years for kind of high scoring, up tempo offense, Mario Cristobal was a bit of a change with his focus on really being dominant in the trenches. And now you have Dan Lanning, who's really made his reputation defensively. And given again, some of the personnel that has been recruited here the last few years, on that side of the ball from, the Noah Sewells and Justin Flows and Brandon Dorlises and on and on, that's kind of a different wrinkle to the program. Obviously we'll see how this season plays out. We'll have a lot more answers to that, to your initial question, in 3-4 months. But certainly a different, a different voice, a different kind of energy from Dan Lanning than some other guys in the last few years.
Is that actually a trend going on in the Pac-12 in general? And I know the Pac-12 is going to change quite a bit coming up, but for now, defense. Because I remember just a few years ago, it just seemed like there's a lot of offense. Oh, the Pac-12, it's about offense. They're not as talented, especially after the USC dynasty. They're not as talented as the East Coast teams and Southeastern teams. There's no way that they're going to match up with those types of teams. But it seems to be, again, just like you said, even with just Oregon, and I'm seeing it, obviously, Utah, Kyle Whittingham and his defense. Are you seeing that as an overall trend, which, of course, to me is a positive trend if you are trying to compete with the best teams in the nation?
Well, I mean, the first team that was trying to kind of zig while everyone zagged was Stanford out here. I mean, they were, under Harbaugh and Shaw, they were really, everybody else is going up tempo, spread it out, we'll, run it down your throat, with 7 offensive linemen on the field.
Yeah.
50 times a game. And I think Utah kind of continued that, just, a different flavor. I mean, their play at the line of scrimmage, the talent they produced on the offensive and defensive lines over the years speaks to itself. And you can see where that trend has kind of taken them, although they've gotten some really explosive athletes at some of the skill positions the last few years too, that maybe to, help them get to the level where they did, break through and make it to a Rose Bowl. And yeah, I think there was a sense, at least anecdotally, I didn't break this down scientifically, but I think with Mario Cristobal, that the Ducks here were doing things a little differently than everybody else was, and that was going to provide an edge. And now with Dan Lanning, maybe that'll still be the case. I mean, I still think you look around the league, you see a lot of coaches with offensive backgrounds. But so maybe Dan Lanning is kind of a difference maker there, and
especially the new kid in town at USC.
Yeah, But I think overall, you look at every staff across this conference, and there's talented guys, staff members on the defensive side of the ball too. Um, from a recruiting perspective, obviously, it seems like defensive linemen are more prone to come from the southern area of the country and maybe the southeast. And when you watch national championship games and things like that, you see the fruits of that borne out. But I think we have seen the staffs here, this staff and the previous staff try to address that here too, and try to get some athletes here that can be difference makers there too. So again, another question that may be
Sure.
easier to answer in 3-4 months.
All right, now quarterback, so important position, and Herbert gone, and the quarterback position took a little bit of a step down, which was going to happen. And last year Brown came in, and it was more of a kind of a safe bet with like you mentioned, the defense was going to win games and Brown wasn't going to make mistakes. Well, now Brown's gone and Bo Nix comes in, another transfer. Bo Nix has had an up and down career so far. So how does he look in camp? And has he, I don't know, you haven't been around him more than just these last few months, but how does he look to you?
Well, I mean, I think what's been appreciated about him is he came in and kind of assimilated himself here, and didn't take anything for granted, because there is some young talent here in Ty Thompson and Jay Butterfield that I think this staff feels has been and remains very deserving of chances. So, we're still a couple weeks out from playing a game, and I think there's still a very real sense that there's three guys here that could potentially help this team win games. So, there's still scrimmages to be had and chances to prove themselves for all three of those guys. I mean, Bo Nix's experience obviously, gives him an X factor that the other two guys simply do not have. And I certainly understand why assumptions are made. When a guy transfers in, after having played as much as he has and for seemingly his last go around, I mean, it's easy to assume that he's going to be the guy, and maybe that'll end up being the case too. But I think if you listen to these coaches and how they have been breaking down practice and breaking down scrimmages, there's still very much a sense that they want to foster competition, and they want to make sure all three guys respond to that the right way and elevate their play the right way, and see how that all works itself out.
Who do you believe that one of the two younger quarterbacks has a leg up yourself, like maybe has a higher ceiling or has demonstrated just a little bit more than the other one?
Well, they're different. I mean, if you just look at recruiting rankings, obviously Thompson, I think probably had a higher ranking. I don't have all that stuff in front of me, but they're just very different. Thompson, a little bit more mobile, maybe a little bit bigger arm, but in Butterfield, big tall guy, a little more, maybe more prone to stay in the pocket, and really accurate thrower. So just, they're really different. So, and so then you ask yourself, hey, maybe it comes down to, the offensive coordinator here, Kenny Dillingham, what does he think, sets this offense up to have the most success, and perhaps one of those two skill sets fits it best. That's, I'm not in his meetings, so I don't know exactly where his head is at that way. But I think if you look at Nix and his experience level and just his style of play that, is on, film from the last 3 years, and then you look at Thompson and Butterfield, what makes it so intriguing is that there are differences between all three guys and how they go about their business. So that adds just such an interesting dynamic and wrinkle to how this battle is playing out.
Okay, now the running game, Verdell and Dye, it seemed like they were there for 7 or 8 years.
Right.
Yeah. So it's now time for a new group. Is there someone that has elevated himself, or do you think this is going to be a committee approach?
Well, I think you always count on the fact that you're going to, that's a position that's going to take a lot of wear and tear, right? And, and guys obviously have different styles too there. And unlike at quarterback, where you feel like maybe you got to tailor what you do to those guys, with running backs, obviously you can take advantage of different skill sets in different ways and get different guys on the field.
Yep.
Sean Dollars is a guy who's coming off some injuries, and I think they feel like can catch the ball and be versatile in that way. Byron Cardwell is a guy who's showed flashes as a young guy, and now is he the guy who gets the next shot? I think you get him in the open field, and he's pretty dynamic. Couple of transfers, Bucky Irving one, a kid they brought in. He was a Minnesota transfer. Kind of looks a little like Verdell did. And a guy really powerful between the tackles and really tough runner. I mean, a guy who kind of runs to initiate contact sometimes rather than away from it.
I like those guys.
Complements some of the other guys that way. I think Cardwell's a guy and Dollars are guys who are going to scoot around you and Irving, a couple of the other guys, freshman Jordan James, another, tough kid, kind of low center of gravity, looked like it could run over you. So I think a lot of options.
Yeah, sounds like it. Yeah,
for that group, and maybe you might be able to take advantage of 2, 3, 4 guys in a quote regular rotation.
Yeah, until if somebody actually steps up and becomes the guy, then
injuries could take their toll and thin that group out, or maybe one guy just takes the rock and runs with it and kind of makes the whole conversation academic. But I think they really like their options there.
Do we know what kind of offense they want to run? Do you have an idea based on what you've seen before? Is it a more power game? Is it more spread game? What are we going to have here for Oregon football this year?
Well, I think if you talk any of the receivers and the tight ends, they're saying, we're going to throw it more. Now that might be just wishful thinking because receivers and tight ends like to see the ball. But I think there's some optimism that Mario Cristobal was a guy who I think he was going to grind you down. I mean, he knew if he was just going to pound it at you and wear you down, and eventually the dam was going to break. And more often than not, that was borne out. But I mean, I think for a fan base that's again was used to traditionally seeing higher scoring games, a little bit more wide open offense. I think there's certainly a desire from the fan base to see things open up a little bit. And I think some of those skill position guys too are maybe cautiously optimistic, if nothing else, that that's going to be a little bit more open, that you're going to see the ball in the air a little bit more. And take advantage, because there's a depth of talent at tight end and receiver as well, along with running back. There's a ton of returning veteran talent and some intriguing young guys on the offensive line too. So you feel like if you run the ball, you're going to have some success there as well. But again, you talk to the receivers and tight ends, they think the ball is going to be in the air a little bit more.
Yeah. Well, I think in general, after last year's offense, if they're going to have success, if Oregon's going to be a better football team, they definitely have to be a little bit more balanced. And that's just the way the NFL is nowadays. Like you were saying with Jim Harbaugh and Stanford, I know as a Michigan fan, winning cures everything. And like you were saying, the fans, we want a high scoring. If you win, fans don't care. As long as you win.
No, I mean, in 2019, Justin Herbert was the quarterback, and this wasn't the most dynamic, wide open, chuck it down the field offense of all time. But Oregon won the Rose Bowl, and that's the great example of winning curing everything. And now Herbert's in the NFL, throwing it all over the place.
People, where was that guy?
And fans are going, well, maybe he wasn't used correctly, but when you win a Rose Bowl,
all that matters.
Whatever you did worked.
That's
so, it is sort of a, I don't know, catch-22, whatever there, where, there's a contradiction there, but, so, yeah.
Do they have, you mentioned the receivers, because I know they lost some key guys, some key veterans. You say they have depth and some good young, fresh players that we're going to probably learn their names more this season. So, give us a few names that maybe outsiders haven't heard of before that are going to be a big part of this offense this season.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think you look at some of the young guys who are ready to break out. Troy Franklin's a guy that in recruiting they were really high on. and could be a guy who kind of steps to the forefront. Dante Thornton, another. These are big, long guys. One thing that really changed under Mario Cristobal is just the body type, with some of the defensive linemen and offensive linemen. It was just walking out from practice from one year to the next was like, oh, like they clearly want a different profile. And I think we're seeing that now at receiver, just the length at receiver. This team, not that long ago, again, that 19 season, you looked at Johnny Johnson and Jalen Redd and, Micah Pittman played here before transferring. These were not big, tall guys, tough guys that could catch the ball and huge hearts and dynamic athletes, but not real rangy. And now the group just looks a lot different, Troy Franklin, Dante Thornton, are guys who've just added a different dimension, and a couple of grad transfers on the outside too. Well, I guess I don't know if technically they're both grad transfers, but transfers in Chase Cota, who was at UCLA.
Okay.
His dad, Chad, was a great safety here on the 1994 Rose Bowl team. Kind of an Oregon legacy, but went to UCLA to start his career. Now he's here for his senior year, and Caleb Chapman is a big, rangy guy from Texas A&M, who's had some injuries in his career, but really opened some eyes early in this camp with his ability to stretch the field and go beat defensive backs for balls down the field and make big plays. And then but you do have more sort of the prototypical small, quicker slot guys too. Chris Hudson's a guy who has shown some flashes the last couple of years and, looks ready for a bigger role. Seven McGee, a guy who's been kind of an all-purpose guy, can return kicks. He's played some running back, now playing more receiver. And another guy who, you can put in the slot or split him out and do a lot of different things with him. So, other guys too vying for jobs, but, a lot of, despite some of the losses, you lose a Devin Williams, you'll lose a Johnny Johnson, all those guys. I think there's some optimism that there's some pretty dynamic talent here.
Okay.
When you add the veteran presence that a Coda and a Chapman bring, that's a group that can thrive despite some of the losses.
Okay. Before we move over to the defense and the offensive line, as you mentioned, and the offensive line was just one of the best really in college football last season. One of the things that really hurt the team, though, offensively were injuries in the line, injuries at skill position. So first thing first, definitely health is very important. But talk about the offensive line. Is there someone along that offensive line that you would consider to be maybe the top pro prospect?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think if you look at, draft previews and, you look at preseason all-conference lists, things like that, TJ Bass, his name pops up a lot. He's a guy who can play guard or tackle. Just a really tough guy, really quiet, not a big talker, but a really physical player at the line of scrimmage. For those of us in the media who are used to, the offensive linemen being some of the most quotable guys on the team, because they're usually so self-effacing and smart by the nature of the position they have to play. He prefers to let his play do the talking. He's pretty reticent, but his pads speak loudly. That's for sure. Alex Forsyth is a guy. The center. I think he's kind of the heart and soul of that group. He was an in-state kid as a prospect. He's come up in the program. He's the center, so he's kind of the leader there up front. He had back problems last year that were pretty debilitating, that he was trying to play through and sometimes just wasn't even able to suit up. But a couple different times where he would warm up for a game in pads day of and then just have to shut it down. But, he's a guy who, if you keep him healthy, I think in the center of the line, they really, can get everybody on the same page and get things moving that way. So, there's metrics out there that'll tell you one of the best predictors of success is experience on the offensive line. And this team has it. I think there were 6 different guys that started at least 9 games last year, which tells you that they had to do some mixing and matching because of some of those injuries. But a lot of guys played a lot of reps too.
Yes, that helps.
Yeah.
Hurts last year, helps this year. Yeah.
Right. And there's some young guys, too, that they're really excited about, I mean, there's a true freshman, Josh Connolly. There's a 5-star kid who's come in and, competing right away, along with a bunch of, some other guys in there, too. So,
okay.
yeah, a good problem to have, having a bunch of experienced veterans, but also some young guys that you feel like might be deserving of some PT too.
Can you then, before we switch over, can you name like who would be like your number one or two breakout performers on offense? Somebody that is ready, you believe, to maybe take that next step and to be a big time part of this offense.
Yeah, I hate to say it, but it still feels a little early in camp. I mean, I think we're still, pardon me, I think because of some of there's a couple transfers at running back, there's a couple transfers at receiver. I think there's still a lot to sort through, and you have a new staff still getting to know some guys too.
Okay, but nobody has really stuck out so far.
Yeah, only because there's a bunch of. I mean, I'm still getting to know all these guys too. And,
sure.
They're when you have like 5 different running backs getting carries, it's well, he looks like he could be a dude. And then the next day, like he looks like he could be a dude. Sure. But what does the staff think? And I think receiver, like I say, like that Caleb Chapman kid, really stuck out through like 4 or 5 days of camp.
Okay.
And then there's other days when Coda or Franklin or Hudson. And so, yeah, I don't know, a breakthrough guy. I mean, I think we haven't talked about the tight end group, but Terrence Ferguson and Mo Matavao were guys who played as freshmen last year, kind of got their feet wet. And I think our guys that there's a lot of optimism about. But another guy there, Patrick Herbert, Justin's younger brother, who got hurt last year around this time and didn't get to play. I think he's kind of a young old guy at this point. I think because of COVID and everything, eligibility wise, he might still be like a sophomore or something.
Okay.
But he was here when his brother was here. He redshirted when his brother was a senior. So he's I guess so this would be his 4th year. I'm looking at the roster.
Right.
Yeah, we still list him as a sophomore, but he's in his 4th year with the program. So he hasn't really had a chance based on depth above him and then some injuries to really shine a lot. But I think there's still hope based on his relative inexperience and the eligibility remaining that he's a guy who can really break out. So, and I think for Oregon fans, seeing another Herbert out there making plays, that would be pretty fun because it's from Eugene, from here in town, watched him succeed in high school, watched his brother, and then said to have another one coming through the pipeline. And to see him break out would be pretty fun, pretty special.
Yeah, his brother come hanging out a little bit more too, maybe if he can. All right, defense. Dorless, is he the best defender on the team? The best defender prospect?
Well, I mean, Noah Sewell seems to be the guy generating a lot of buzz. I mean, so it's hard. I mean, I'm not some NFL personnel. I'm no threat to take any NFL personnel guy's front office job. So,
no, but he's
I don't
a good
get
one. Yes,
out over my skis there. Yeah, but I think Noah Sewell seems to be generating a lot of kind of first round buzz. But if you're looking for maybe somebody who's not generating the buzz that he deserves, Dorless might be that guy. Okay. I really, he seems to be the guy that's really setting the tone defensively. There was this anecdote from practice the other day. We were in the middle of like a full-on 11-on-11 period. It wasn't like full live tackling, but 11-on-11, grinding through a hot afternoon day in practice, and Dan Lanning just pulls Dorless out, sends him to the sideline with a strength coach, and says, "I want to see if right now you can hit how close you can hit to like running your max speed on the GPS systems they run."
Okay.
He just wanted to test him, and Dorless hit 95% of his max, and then hop back into practice.
Okay.
So like, I think that illustrated Lanning's looking for him to show that he can be a leader. He can be kind of called out in front of the group to perform on the spot like that.
Yes.
Practice continued. It's not like everybody stopped and watched him run, but it was like, how hard are you willing to go, every rep or, whatever I ask you to do. And, so yeah, I think he's a guy that, as that moment shows, they're looking to prove that like he's a dude, like, and that, whatever they ask of him, he can get done. And that, he's not going to wear down. He's not going to get tired. He's going to have the energy to he's been banged up at times in his career, but if he can stay healthy, I think they're really looking for him to be a disruptor. And obviously, when you lose a Kayvon Thibodeau, it's natural to say, okay, where's the
Absolutely.
pass rushing threat going to come from? DJ Johnson's a pretty special guy coming back on the edge, and Mace Funa, Braden Swinson. There's some other proven edge guys too, but as a down lineman or also somebody who can stand up, Dorless is a guy who I think really can be a tone setter up front.
Okay, and of course, with Sewell, you've seen a lot of good linebackers over the recent years at Oregon. Even he seems to be at a different level. So
yeah, I think that whole family's at a different level.
Yeah, no question about that.
Yeah.
How special do you think he could be? Because there is a difference between being like even Lloyd last year for Utah had just a tremendous season, making all sorts of plays. All the accolades were deserved. He goes to the NFL, and I know I'm not asking to be a scout. He goes to the NFL, and he barely makes it as a first-round draft pick.
Yeah.
So middle linebackers in the NFL aren't really, okay, it's important, but not as important as the edge guys, unless you're super special, maybe. And again, I'm trying to compare him to Lloyd. How does Sewell compare to those types of guys? Do you believe he's somebody that's special, somebody that, if an inside linebacker is going to get drafted high in the NFL, this is that type of guy that will do it?
I guess again, where my mind goes there is not to comparing them to other players, but just looking at that family and what they've done. Because they had a couple older brothers that weren't kind of gifted with the same height or physique that Panay and Noah were, and still were really, really good college players who got themselves at least a shot at trying to make an NFL roster. And then you get to Panay and Noah, who are just physical freaks and have that same desire and will and kind of warrior spirit. And I just, it's hard to imagine anything but success. I mean, you look at the Panay Sewell. I mean, I don't mean to suggest he was some, perfectly finished prospect when he made it to the league, but I think he showed out pretty well given his youth and how much was put on his plate.
They like him.
Yeah, and I just Noah has those same, again, just that competitiveness, that just warrior mentality, that spirit in practice every day. I mean, most guys don't love practice every single day, but those guys seem to, So
is there something about his game that he's heads and above? I know he's good at a lot of things, maybe very good at a lot of things, but is there one thing he's really good at?
Again, breaking down skills like that, not going to be my forte.
Sure.
He's a really physical guy, so I think, playing in the box, getting off blocks, getting to the ball, he's obviously really good at that. And he's talked a lot about this preseason about feeling like coverage is a place where he needs to get better.
Okay.
So, I think he really wants to be able to just open up his hips a little quicker, get down the field with, be a little more mobile that way. He speaks to a guy that he's willing to acknowledge, hey, this is someplace I know I need to get better, and this is what I need to do to get better in that attribute. So, we'll see how he's deployed and if he's really tested in that regard much this year, and if he shows improvement. But, that's, on the other side of the coin, that's an area where he feels like he wants to show improvement. And obviously, if he does that, that's only going to help his stock.
How about the players around those two in the front seven? Because that's really what makes up the team. I mean, two really good players. It's nice to have, but you better have a whole lot more than just those two guys. So who should we be keeping an eye on?
Well, like I say, DJ Johnson on the edge is just a physical freak. I mean, he was moved over to tight end at times the last couple of years. He's played both ways in games. He can just do a little bit of everything, but he's focusing on defense now. And I think in terms of physical talent, there's a sense that he really has the ability to get after the quarterback in a special way. I mean, he's not going to be Kayvon Thibodeau, maybe, a perfect analog there. But a guy who coming off the edge is going to be a really dangerous player. Popo Amavai, Keon Ware Hudson are a couple guys down linemen who played last year, were hurt in the spring. Dorlus is also hurt in the spring. So didn't really get to progress as much this spring, but now are back and are veteran guys. But they really worked the transfer portal to get some help up front. Taki Taimani was a guy who transferred from Washington, and he's lost like 30-something pounds. But he still feels powerful, just feels much quicker. An interior lineman there, and then a couple guys that Tony Tuioti, the position coach, when he got hired here from Nebraska, a couple guys followed him from Nebraska, Casey Rogers and Jordan Riley.
Okay.
And I think those are guys that they've played at this level and can be in a rotation up front there. So there's a lot of options, I think, along that front line. And then linebacker is going to be really, really fun to watch because when Justin Flo is another guy who was like a 5-star kid when Noah Sewell signed and played one game last year. Played in the opener, had like 13 tackles and I think forced a fumble and just wreaked havoc, but then got hurt. And, the fan base here is really anticipating getting to see what, two former 5-star high school recruits could look like next to each other. But there's some competition there. Jeff Boss is a guy who moved down from safety when there was just a need at linebacker last year because of injuries and was fantastic. Really showed a lot of promise there. Obviously, he's a guy who moved down from safety. He's a heck of an athlete, but really, well-built kid too. He's not giving up a lot of size in the middle there. Smart kid, mature kid, heady kid. Jackson Leduc is a guy who I think he was in the same recruiting class as Sewell and Flo and didn't have the same kind of buzz then, but is a guy that, coaches have been really excited about. And, he was limited by some injuries last year, made it back for the end of the year, and then had to sit out the bowl game because of the COVID protocols. But, he's a guy they're really excited about. Keith Brown's a 5-star kid who was an in-state prospect from just up the road in Lebanon. So how all those rotations shake out, I think, are going to be really intriguing. D-line, the more bodies I think you can throw at the opposition out there, the better. Linebacker, you assume, you're probably going to want to hit on 2-3 guys and stick with what you got. And so, there's going to be there might be some tough choices there. I mean, I think, the obvious assumption that people are making is that it's going to be Flo and Sewell in the middle, but I just don't think, based on the promise that Bossa showed and the level that Leduc has played at when he's been available, which hasn't been a lot the last couple of years, and then Brown's on the come. It might not be as simple as some folks are assuming.
Well, those are the good problems to have.
Right. Yeah. It kind of feels like the O-line where, okay, you could roll out this 5 or 6 and, probably be okay. But then you have these other 2-3 guys over here on the side going, hey, look at me, you know? It's
every coach wants competition.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
So it sounds like if you were going to name some breakout players generally for the team, that you might go to that linebacker group and pick 1 or 2 of those guys.
Yeah, well, I mean, I particularly nationally, say a guy like Flo is able to play a whole season and is that guy there. He's somebody that people might remember from recruiting, but have kind of forgotten the last couple of years, and then be like, oh yeah,
I remember him. Yes.
Yes. Whereas Bossa wasn't the same caliber recruit, or Leduc wasn't quite the same caliber recruit. So they could be guys where it's like, I'm looking up this guy's bio. I don't even know that name.
Yes.
And wow, he's a dude. But I think the secondary for, in terms of breakout guys might be, where the real intrigue lies. I mean, there's a transfer corner, Christian Gonzalez, who's from Colorado, again, followed his position coach here when this new staff was assembled. And I think, there's some real confidence that, he can be a guy who's a leader in the secondary.
Okay.
Bennett Williams, who was maybe the best safety in the country last September and then got hurt. before the loss at Stanford in a Friday walkthrough of all things. Just really unfortunate freak injury there, but a guy who's really looking to finish his career on a high note this year. Jabal Hill, who was a big-time playmaker a couple years ago. Not quite as prominent last year, but a guy who could play nickel. Bennett and Hill can both play nickel or move back to safety, and there's some young recruits at corner. Dante Manning's been here a couple of years now, former top recruit, Jalil Florence, Jalil Tucker, freshman. But there's a couple of really long guys that have been here a couple of years now and might be ready to take a shot. Brian Addison, who's played some receiver here and is a safety. Triquez Bridges, who can play corner or safety, was a real ball hawk. His high school numbers are silly. And these are both guys that are like 6'3", long arms, athletic. And if they can win spots on that back end, I think, somebody from your perspective is looking at, draft talent.
Oh yeah.
That's going to stick out when you're watching film. Like, who are these? I mean, these storks back there, playing DB for the Ducks. Again, there's competition there, but those are a couple guys who, if they do win jobs, I think could jump out to, evaluators at the next level. Like, whoa, we got to take a look at this guy because that body type is just different than a lot of other guys we see.
Sounds to me like Williams then, because there's a lot of new faces in the secondary, but as you mentioned, he had such a good start to the season until the injury. So would he be the guy that may be ahead of everyone else right now if you had to look at it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how to quantify that. I mean, again, I think Gonzalez is a guy who I think they feel like has a proven track record and, has really, really big time potential. And he's a younger guy. Bennett Williams, started out at Illinois, was really lightly recruited coming out of hhigh school.
Okay.
Started out at Illinois for a year, then transferred to JC for a couple of years. So, when he broke out like he did last September, it was kind of a pleasant surprise.
Okay.
I mean, there was a sense that athletically he had that potential.
But it was only a month. Yeah.
Well, you're right. And we'll see if he can put it together. And he did put it together, but it was a month. Yeah. So, I mean, I still think there's a sense that, I don't think anybody's putting pressure on him to be, that guy game in, game out. It was great that he was. When he gets back to that, that's awesome too. But I don't think there's a sense that he has to be that for this defense to be successful. Or if he's not that, this secondary suddenly has a bunch of question marks. I mean, certainly there were jobs to be won there based on all the talent that graduated. But I think there's a number of candidates that they were hopeful that, could fill those jobs. And again, I think you look at Dan Lanning's background defensively.
Yes.
Somebody in my position didn't want to make a bunch of assumptions about, this guy was a fit in last year, and so therefore he's guaranteed to be a perfect fit this year. Yes. Maybe they're going to do things differently. Yep. I don't get the sense they're going to do things that dramatically differently, but I think when there's a new staff, kind of bring this full circle. In 3 or 4 months, we're going to know how things are going to look in a different way than we do now.
And any idea, I know it's early, and he's never been a head coach before, regarding special teams, how he is taking the special teams? Some coaches come in and they're like, man, special teams is such a big part of of this team, and they're putting everything into it, and they put starters on special teams. And I'm sure you've seen those coaches, and then you've seen other coaches that handle special teams differently. So I know it's early, but any vibe yet on how you think special teams might turn out under Lanning?
Yeah, I mean, he's prioritizing it in a way that is different than I think at least the last couple staffs.
Okay.
And different than it's certainly different than anything I've seen in the years I've been here. In that, when the team goes through its stretch line. And then before they go into position drills, there's 5-10 minutes of kind of special teams oriented drills that, from the sideline look like part of it is just, hey, we're getting guys loosened up. We're getting them used to explosive movements as they get into kind of practice mode here to start out each day. but it's fielding and returning kicks. It's getting off the line with the coverage team. It's breaking down. You've come down the field, now you got to break down and prepare to make a tackle against a ball carrier. There's just an emphasis in terms of specific drill work, specific to special team skills that I don't really recall seeing often a lot here. The last, and I've been watching these guys practice for 20 years off and on. And Joe Lorig, the coordinator that he brought in, I think, the guy so far expressing a lot of confidence in just his attention to detail and, his philosophies there. So, yeah, I mean, obviously every team hopes its special teams can be an X factor, and these guys are no different, but it seems like, they're devoting time and attention to it in a different way than I've seen in some years past.
And we'll see how that translates in the next 3 or 4 months, right?
Right.
Before I let you go, Rob, the schedule, wow. Defending champs, Lanning, Georgia. It's a great story. Everybody's going to tune in. Everybody wants to, especially anybody outside the Oregon, even Georgia crowd is like curious about what's going on here with this Lanning kid and, what kind of coke. I call him a kid, but like you said, he's so young. So everyone's going to
10 years younger than me. It's wild.
There you go. So, So are you sensing that as well? I'm assuming you are, that there's just this buildup coming.
Oh yeah, I think there's a ton of enthusiasm amongst the fan base here, kind of to see what product. I mean, I don't think in some ways, because it's a first year coach, it wouldn't matter who you were playing. Obviously, there's going to be some enthusiasm to see what that product looks like the first time you take the field. I think there's some realism among the fan base too. You're going against the defending champs, basically on their home turf. The crowd's going to be 90-10 probably, something like that, Georgia fans. So it's going to be a tough environment. But I think as we saw when Oregon went into Ohio State last year, this is a team that, doesn't back down from a challenge like that and can step up to a challenge like that. So, and then you look at coming back home and playing Eastern Washington and then BYU. I think those games too, and particularly that BYU game are ones where the fan base is saying, "Hey, those are good. That's going to be really revealing as well." So, and before you get into conference play, we're going to start to get a sense for what direction things are headed. Just those first 2-3 weeks of the season.
Yeah, because I mean, does Eastern Washington? I know they could be good, so I don't know what their record was last year. But that's a tough.
Yeah, I got to be honest. I don't know as much about them either.
10-3 last year, and they did play in the playoffs. So, they're usually a very good FCS program. So that's a tough schedule. It's a tough non-conference schedule to start off with.
No doubt about it.
Yeah,
no doubt about it. So I keep saying it'll be 3 or 4 months. Maybe it'll be 3 or 4 weeks before we know.
Well, maybe. Yeah, it all depends. Hopefully, you win the first game and then take care of the rest.
You're here.
Rob, I appreciate it as always.
Yep.
I hope we get the opportunity, especially if something really important or something positive happens during the season. Maybe we could do it again. But thanks a lot, and good luck this season.
Sure. Appreciate it.
Take care.